Okay. Thanks, Ginger. So welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Library Trustees, meeting of June 25th, 2024. Time is 6:01 PM. And I'll invite Ginger to call the roll.
Trustee Ando,
Here.
Trustee Cortez,
Here.
Trustee Kyle,
Here.
Trustee Lee, Chair Vidat.
Here. Thanks, Ginger. Now I'll invite Ginger to explain how the public can participate in this evening's agenda.
Thank you, Chair Vidat. This meeting will be held in person and is being recorded and streamed live to Zoom at the link on the agenda. You may participate in person to provide public comment. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. You may also submit your comments by email by 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting. We are offering closed captioning for this evening's meeting on Zoom. Select the live transcript button on Zoom to enable this feature.
Thank you, Ginger. So we'll move on to the first item on the agenda, which is approving the regular meeting minutes of May 14th, 2024. Any
Motion to approve.
Second.
quick off the draw. All right, great. And there's no one here and no one in the waiting room. So yeah, Ginger, can you please call the roll call vote?
All right, Trustee Ando,
Aye.
Trustee Cortez,
Aye.
Trustee Kyle,
Aye.
Trustee Lee, Chair Vidat.
Aye. Okay. Next on the agenda is open time for public expression, but since there's no one here and I don't think we have any comments submitted, then we can just move on to item number 2, which is special presentations. Older adult outreach and your library 24/7 program presented by William Calhoun.
Actually, the program started out as Library Thursday, and then it became Library Topics. And that was more than a year ago. What had happened was former supervisor Daniel Cottrell invited me to go and meet the individuals at Vivillon because they were looking for some new partners to do programs with them. And they specifically asked the library if they were interested. So I had no idea what this meeting was going to be about. But what I determined based on our meeting was that what we were going to do is focus on access to the databases and other electronic resources at the library. The idea in my mind was to get everyone familiarized with those databases and other electronic resources at the library. And so that's why it went from Library Topics to Library Thursday. And now, because we've moved it out of Vivillon, Vivillon had a little issue in which they no longer could support the program. So I decided, well, let's try it over at the library. So that's 24/7, your library, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, real straightforward, simple concept. What we hope to have done, and with Vivillon, it was seniors program. And the idea we would have no more than 15 people. And I would do it either via Zoom or in person. Everyone had to have a library card. Everyone had to have some familiarity with their devices, and everyone should bring their device to any of the meetings. Now, the interesting experience was I had a whole agenda that I wanted to go through, and the idea was in the first month, I just get them associated with their devices and how their devices were using their library card to get to the library resources. The second month, we look at some of the library's digital resources. And then we go into the third and the fourth month. Well, at Vivillon, what was going on, what happened was most of the people were there actually to find out how to use their computers. They really weren't interested in connecting to the library, except maybe with the movies, but mostly it was, how do I save my passwords? How do I use this device? What's the difference between an Apple and a PC and their Kindle device? And so it expanded from initially 1 hour, then it went into 2 hours. Next thing I know, I'm there 2.5 hours. Never once did we talk about the library and those resources at Vivillon. But it was fun, and everyone seemed to enjoy themselves. And then when the Vivillon situation changed and I moved it into the library, what I discovered was that I actually had a more receptive group in terms of using the library's resources. You see, because they were actual library users. And so they honestly wanted to see, okay, what are the newspapers? What are the magazines? What movies can I download? How does it work? Really interesting. So we've done that, I guess. This is probably into my second month. I believe I started in May. And so in that period of time, it actually has been closer to the concept that was originally decided on. The only difference was, and that's not a real difference at all, was that because they were library users, they were more familiar with dealing with the library's databases, so all of them came prepared. At Vivalon, people were not prepared at all. Okay, now, the only problem that you run into is there's no agenda. Because if you're at Vivalon and I tell you we're talking about the library and you want to know how to use your cell phone or your Mac or your PC, I really wasn't interested in teaching that because this was a hybrid class. There are very few classes where you're going to be able to use non-Apple equipment simultaneously and that I would teach both kinds of equipment. It didn't matter because the equipment is not important to connecting to the library. What's important to connecting to the library is having your library card registered and understanding how the process works. You know, most people think, I know, if I can get this book, I should be able to download it at any time. Well, no, because we purchase electronic books in the same way that we purchase hard material, meaning that if we have 7 copies, that's all we have. And after a period of time, those copies exhaust themselves, so the library should either invest in more copies or just let them dwindle away to nothing. Yes, there is a due date. Difference with the due date for the library is you have a little fudge factor. But in downloadable materials, there is no fudge factor. So if they tell you something is ready for you to pick up in 72 hours, they mean 72 hours. That's not, oh, the weekend or it's the end of the day. No, that doesn't work. So that is basically what the whole class is about. And like I said, dealing with library users is much more relevant than dealing with non-users, because non-users want to learn how to use their equipment, but they're less focused on the materials that are available. Users are really focused on the use. So some of the things they had to learn was, if you have a subscription to the Washington Post, you're not going to necessarily be able to go and use our Washington Post unless you change your name. Okay, because Washington Post will not allow you to double dip, as it were. So that's basically what your library 24/7 is about. So fairly straightforward concept. Will we continue it? I don't know. We're getting somewhere at Vivalon. I was getting anywhere from 6 to 8 more often than not. It would be 4. I'm getting 2 to 4 inside the library of people who will attend the program. But like I said, for me, much nicer way to deal with people because they know the building, they understand the structure, and they have actually better comprehension of the tools that they're using to get there.
Excellent.
That's it.
Does the library have an app? I know I've been here 8 years and I was like, so.
No, we-
So, you know, not just be older adult, outreach, be any adult.
Yes.
Okay,
And it was,
I've never used
Vivalon,
it.
it was older.
I was like,
adults,
how do I do that?
And
Yeah.
when we moved into the library, it's still, we just threw it open to anyone who wanted to attend.
But there's
And so
literally
it's
an app?
Mostly people who are my contemporaries.
Well, it's
If you go to our
the,
website, I think is how you're going to start out. At least that's
I
where
mean,
I
Libby
started.
is the big app that you would
oh,
use.
but like Santa Fe
to-
Public Library. doesn't
Yeah.
have-
No.
Okay, I was like, I
No.
felt really out of the know.
No,
Oh,
yeah.
Well, that's where you
Vermont has an app that's separate, but I don't really know that there's much.
There's that-
Sorry, I interrupted because I.
The application is provided by the third party vendor.
Yeah.
Okay, the tool is the only thing that you need. The library card is very important and it has to be registered so that when you go to the application that we're providing, it recognizes your library card and it recognizes passwords and it recognizes that you are a member of that particular library. Yeah. In the state of California, it gets kind of tricky because, you know, we have borrowing where you can go and apply for a library card anywhere in the state of California and get one. What restrictions you might run into are some of them will not allow you to have access to some of the applications if you don't live inside the jurisdiction. That is the county libraries, College of Marin, Dominican, Sausalito, Belvedere, Tiburon, yada, yada, you know, all the there. So it comes to what, about 17 libraries that are members of Marin. And because we belong to the consortium, everything always goes back to Marin. So when I'm teaching the class, everything starts and ends at the San Rafael Public Library because that's who I represent. And I want people to understand that this is part of what their tax dollars are paying for. So these third-party vendors come to us via MarinNet, the consortium, but in actuality, we can buy some of these applications ourselves independently of MarinNet.
So I'm just curious if the turnout is low. Are you willing to meet with people one-on-one, or is that too time consuming if somebody stops in and says, hey, teach me how to do that? But I need to come to you.
We are willing to do mostly everything, but when we're on the reference desk, it is too time consuming. So we set aside blocks of hours. And we also have tutors for people who just want to learn something about their own device or some of the applications that are provided on their devices. So yes, we are willing to do it one-on-one, but we're always trying to safeguard anything more than 15 minutes is a big amount of time because then you're away from the desk. You got other people that are wanting to check out books. You got people who have other reference questions. They want to place holes, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, we will do one-on-one, but no, we prefer not to. Now, the question really comes to mind is, for that kind of turnout, are we interested in continuing the program? Well, we're 2 months in, I'm getting 2 to 4 people. I think the largest class I had was 6 met in this room, but I force everyone to bring their device. And I used to show them how to do things on the screen, but then I discovered that everybody's looking at the screen and no one's looking at their device. So all of the devices may display differently. So you got to get them associated with the concept of looking at the device, associated with the concept that you really can't break them. Because I think that's a big hurdle for most people, really, because we grew up different generation. So they're always worried about, okay, am I going to get a virus? Am I going to break it? No, you can't. Why do they not want their grandchildren and their children or their neighbors to walk through this stuff with them? I discovered it's because after a period of time, within the first 5 to 10 minutes of trying to show someone how to do something, the first thing they will do is take your device, do it for you, hand it back to you and say, this is the way it's done. Because in all of these things, you must learn to look around the screen. So you're looking for your way out, you know, or into the application. And that's a difficult thing to teach people, that if a 13-year-old can handle this, so can you at the age of 25 or at the age of 75. You can handle it. You have a fear that 13-year-olds don't have because you have your money tied up in the device, so you don't want to break it. Well, you pretty much have to throw it on the ground and then run over it and break it. You know, what you want to do is start adjusting yourself to the concept of looking around the screen, which is why, and what you will notice is that most people, and when I say most people, it's all ages. Once they learn how to do their one thing, that's the one thing that they do. Instagram, Facebook, those are the things that they will do. If you are used to getting you're an independent journal online, that's the one you're going to. You're not thinking in terms of, wow, I have a whole world of ideas and concepts out there that is pretty much the same as if I stepped inside and stuff. Because you look at all the books on our shelves, you look at the catalog, you find your way, you browse. Well, people tend only to browse, those catchphrases that they see, you see an email that says something sensational, so you browse that. But in actuality, you can use these instruments for a little bit more important things. It's getting more and more difficult because I think that there's no agreed upon sources. See, at one point in time, we agreed Oxford English Dictionary was a final word in definitions. We knew that Britannica Americana, final word. Well, now we have so many things out there. We at the library vet that information in the same way we vet the information that we put on the couch. You see, so we are always trying to say, this is probably the best source to look at for this kind of information. Consumer reports is going to be consumer reports regardless. But now you have electronic access to it. So that means you don't have to come to the library, and it can be 1 a.m. and you can get on your device and go and look at consumer reports reviews. You can browse the day's newspaper, New York Times, Washington Post, Marin IJ, you name it. So the library has stepped forward in that we are now looking at digital resources or electronic resources as being fundamentally a part of the information resource that we are.
I never knew that. Well, cancel all my subscriptions. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
So you get, and budgeting is going to be always a factor. How much money you have to spend and resources. There is a committee that is part of MarinNet. We're going to be reviewing all the digital resources that MarinNet offers as a group. Probably the best access for digital resources or electronic resources is Belvedere Tiburon. They actually have a set. Dominican University has access to some really good resources. Will we be able to step further into the future that way? Like I said, it's pretty expensive. And sometimes when you look at the use, it's not very large. So like for a library card, we can name something like 90% library of the individuals who live in San Rafael, 90% have library cards. So what do you think? Like maybe 40% of them actually come into the building. Maybe 40% of them even use their library card. So if you're starting to look at that kind of response, then you're going to probably say to yourself, well, for that amount of money, is this a value to us? And the answer is always going to be yes. Anytime you can put information in the hands of people is always of value, regardless of the numbers.
It's fascinating. I appreciate the information. I'm curious, what are the majority of questions that come in? Is it? I would think it would be like how to reserve a book or get a book through MarinNet.
Those are big questions, but I'm seeing more and more. It's amazing to me. People are treating this like 411 information because information doesn't exist anymore. People are asking us to look up things for them. You see, so the kinds of questions that we get are still a variety, but becoming less a part of what maybe 20 years ago was library related questions.
People who would come up to the main desk and
come to the main desk and ask for, and ask for information with regards to what are the best sellers and what book would you recommend? What do you consider to be the answer? Well, I don't have the answer, but I'll give you the sources that I would look at and share them with you. And that is the answer. I try to stay away from sources that are not verifiable. You know, so Babylon B is not necessary, unless of course you just want to laugh. That's not a verifiable source. The Washington Post is still somewhat of a standard. PBS is still somewhat of a standard. JSTOR is still somewhat of a standard. Consumer Reports still a standard. World Almanac, still standards. You see, those are still standards. But like I said, people aren't looking at those exacting standards anymore because they have an opportunity to hear others who say that's wrong. So the election was rigged. Right?
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
You can go to you and ask for a little mini tutor.
Yes, you can.
Where do
And
you,
I,
so where do you advertise as far as when
it's
the next?
mostly on our website. And then we send out promotional information, I think once a week, once a month. So those are basically the places that we advertise. We put posters all over the place, but posters are confusing. Just because we see so much of the written word in front of her that we sometimes don't even read it, you know? And it's hard to imagine someone actually standing there, which is why it's difficult getting people to use our resources online, because it's very difficult for them to be looking at that screen and trying to figure, okay, what is all this and why am I doing this? And why don't I just go to the game I always play? Yeah,
I'm sorry, I actually think I have another question. I apologize for
that's
that.
fine.
Do you have specific hours right now that this session is held? And the
Yes.
reason I
until-
ask
Yeah,
this
go ahead.
is that I work with a group called Marin well, it's a group that works with older folks here in Marin. And I specialize in tech. So we have monthly meetings or individual meetings with people. But that would be great for us to be able to cross-advertise that this is available, particularly to San Rafael residents. Marin Villages, I'm sorry, that's.
Right.
the group.
Okay, I know.
But if you could let us know, or Catherine, what is, I will let Marin Villages know. Because it could help, broaden that.
The second and fourth, is it first and third or second and fourth?
It's the second and fourth Thursdays, and a four. Second and fourth Thursday of each
Oh,
month.
that makes sense. I didn't put that
It
together.
was like really straightforward for me. I like think like that.
Mhm.
How am I gonna remember it? Well, 24/7.
It is
So-
on the event calendar.
Oh, okay.
And so,
What time?
yeah, second and
So
fourth
you're-
Thursday of each month, we
Might
start
not
at
always
2 p.m.
2 p.m.
Yeah, try to get out of there at about 3.
Oh,
Oftentimes I'm there
that's our home.
talking to them until 3:30.
Okay.
Do you need a reference desk or?
No,
The
we meet
calendars
in one of
and
these
the
rooms.
mobile.
How-
We haven't met in a while.
Okay,
There's no meeting, so we use a small room. I've used
so
this.
come up
larger room.
here, is that
Yeah.
what?
And it'll tell you if we need to change venues because sometimes all the spaces are busy.
All right,
So if we need to
Great.
change venue, they'll let you know on the website,
all right.
you know, but yeah, so
Thank
second
you.
and fourth Thursday.
2 p.m. All right.
You got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Good
you.
evening.
Bye.
Alrighty. Move on to item number 3, regarding our operational planning for the downtown library closure.
Yeah, some
Sorry.
big news. Big news, pretty exciting. Oh gosh, oh no, I can't. Oh, there's the. Okay, so. Yes, the library renovation closure is coming up faster than I would like it to. But. Let me see, okay, yeah, we're good. So background on this, I know we presented about this project a few times now, so you all are familiar with it, but we did secure 2 million in funding for building forward grant for life safety and critical infrastructure improvements, and then an additional 1 million in targeted grant from the state library. That 1 million is more for kind of design and user experience improvement. And you all have seen the design, the perm or the conceptual design for that. We are currently in the permitting stage. We should have permits very shortly. And we are also in the process of securing construction bids. We're doing kind of a best value approach where we have a request for qualifications from contractors that have experience in this type of project. This is a unique type of project with the historical nature of the Carnegie, kind of the limited budget. So we will be interviewing contractors in the beginning of July. And then those that are qualified will be invited to provide a bid on the project. So our hope is that we'll have the construction bid awarded in September for a I think actually, wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. So the construction we hope will start late September, early October. However, we needed to kind of set a date for the move and for reopening. And so we thought that kind of timing that around Labor Day and the end of summer made sense. That we would be closed kind of those first 2 weeks in September. So we would close the downtown library on September 3rd. And our goal will be to reopen the pop-up library on September 16th. So in those 2 weeks, we'll be, moving everything over, setting ourselves up, making sure everything works. And I'm hopeful that's enough time. But there's a lot to consider. And I think there's going to be a lot of surprises along the way that we'll have to roll with. But then then that will give us a little bit more time to kind of finish moving everything out of the library before construction starts. And at the moment, our plan is actually not to move everything out because the main stacks there's not really a lot of construction going on there. So our hope is to kind of build a temporary wall to protect that area, and that will remain. But it will kind of depend a little bit on the conversation with the contractors. And then the goal is for spring 2025 for us to reopen the downtown library. So the exciting news is that we have secured a lease to open a downtown pop-up library while the main library is closed. And that is at the Beauty Expo on 4th Street across. Yeah, it actually it's a really great location. No space is perfect. One of the things we're kind of realizing right now is that beauty supply stores did not have that were open. I mean, this place has been closed for years at this point. At that time, they did not have the same data and internet needs as the libraries. So that's something we've been trying to troubleshoot with our IT team with MarinNet. Is how we're going to get the level of internet service that we need to operate there. But really at this point, that's kind of been the main challenge where we did some roof repairs. But otherwise the space is really nice. There's a kind of this big open space that we'll kind of walk through the design, what we've kind of proposed for the layout and design. There's enough space for staff. And to be honest, the price was right. The per square footage price was less than half of any other kind of downtown retail location. And that's a lot because this property owner is not looking for long-term tenants. Their ultimate goal is a massive redevelopment project. And so, they're happy to have someone in there in the interim and kind of with the, different level of service. So that's really great. We're very excited about that. So, the pop-up operations, obviously, we're going to have a much lower level of collections. It's just going to be a smaller space. But we will have space designated for children's, for adults, and for programs. There's going to be staff space to still manage our circulation and tech services, as well as to have our administrative staff. The collection that we're going to bring over is going to focus on new and popular items as well as hold pickup. That's obviously, we are still going to be filling holds from other MarinNet libraries. That's really something we're going to lean on heavily in this period so that people can still request it, get it downtown or at Northgate or Pickleweed. We actually will be having one of the parking stalls in front of the library restriped as loading, unloading, so folks could stop, you know, for 5 minutes running, grab their holds and come back
I was
out.
gonna ask.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, because we do know parking is gonna be it's gonna be different at this location, right? Our current location, there's free parking. It might not always be like right by the building, but it's available. Whereas this one will, you know, we are gonna be in the heart of downtown where most of the parking is paid. We are also gonna have public Wi-Fi and Chromebooks, but we won't have public computing. This is kind of the same model that we've utilized at Northgate and has worked well. I think it will probably be a shift for our downtown patrons. But we just really, the space isn't available. The kind of Wi-Fi and internet needs, we just aren't really able to service that. So, and you know, I think that with the collection, we've been meeting with other libraries that have kind of done this and got, that was a big question for staff, is what books, what materials are we going to bring? And what they really recommended was to really try and narrow the collection that you're gonna bring, and also to recognize that throughout the span that you're at that at the pop-up library, we are gonna continue to purchase books and add new books to the collection, and those need somewhere to go. So when we come in, it's gonna, you know, I think they said, you know, try and fill about half your shelves, because that's gonna, the collection is gonna expand significantly and take up that space as you're there. But we will also be filling holds from our library, so we do expect some good circulation to come through. This is probably, you probably would want to look at your, but this is kind of the layout. So you see at the top, or on kind of on the left, here is the entryway. There is already kind of a big existing counter area that we'll be using for kind of our self-checks and our catalog machines, as well as our public service desks. There will be 2 public service desks in the library. And then kind of on the front right-hand side will be the children's area. The left-hand side will be holds pickup. More and kind of all the way down to the back towards the circulation staff area will be kind of adults, hold pickup. Space, there will be wired computers for people to plug in their laptops. And then in the back on the left, that's all mobile shelving and mobile furniture that we can pull out to hold programs. There's very nice restrooms, which the staff are very excited about. So they'll are much better public restrooms at this location than we currently have, although hopefully that will be fixed with the renovation. And then there's kind of staff space for circulation, for our technical services, as well as upstairs a few private and shared offices. So it's, you know, it's amazing how quickly you can fill up the space.
Yeah.
You kind of walk in there and it looks quite large and nice and open, and then yeah, it gets filled quickly. But I think staff are pretty excited about this layout and what we're going to be able to do. Yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a different feel for the library. It's a different location. It'll be getting kind of a different foot traffic and different patterns of use. And I think we're kind of excited to see what that might bring. And in addition to being a smaller location, it takes less staff to operate, right? You know, downtown, not only do we have 3 seats that we fill for public service desk, where this will only have 2. We have a much larger collection, so much more work in terms of circulation, paging, things like that. So with that shift, we are going to be able to operate kind of expand our hours at other locations. Also, just like how many staff will fit here, we want to find other places for them to go in terms of desk space. So we are proposing to increase hours at all 3 locations. You know, downtown, we already operate pretty expanded hours compared to the other locations. So at this point, we will be reopening on Monday nights. At Pickleweed, we will be opening on Mondays where we are currently closed on Mondays. And at Northgate, we will be opening on Tuesdays where we're currently closed on Tuesdays. We also will be adjusting our Northgate hours, currently open from 11 to 5 at Northgate. And our staff are scheduled 9 to 5. So we feel like we talked to staff and they feel like we would be able to support opening Northgate at the same time as the other libraries. So, you know, there's some of this we're testing out to see how it might feel long-term. The other things we're doing is we are adding an evening hours at Northgate. Currently, Northgate is only open 11 to 5. Wednesday through Saturday. We don't have an evening hours at that location, so we're gonna test that out. I know that we had that pre-COVID and staff felt that that was pretty popular. So we wanna test that out in this period, bring it back, see if it's something the community wants. So that will be a 12 to 7 hours of operation on Wednesday, and on Tuesday, we're switching the night. So currently Pickleweed is open 12 to 7 on Thursdays. We're moving that to Tuesdays. And the reason that we're doing that is that currently there is no time where we can hold an all-staff meeting without closing the library or changing staff schedules. We have a number of staff that either work Sunday through Thursday or Tuesday through Saturday shifts. So Mondays and Fridays, we have a lot of staff that aren't scheduled for those days. So really, if we're looking at trying to hold an all-staff meeting, it has to happen Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And if we have an evening shift on any of those days, then we have staff are coming in late and staff are coming in early, and the only overlap is during our open hours. So I really wanted to try and find a time where we could have staff meetings, quite honestly. And so that's Thursdays from 9 to 10 a.m. And that's why we've shifted all of our evening hours to Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. You know, we'll see how it works. You know, I think a lot of libraries, they'll either open late on Mondays or on Fridays, but that doesn't work for us the way we have staff scheduled to kind of work those alternative schedules. Yeah, but I think it is something that's really important. I think it's something having all staff be able to come together and meet face to face and have those interactions. You know, we had an all staff meeting in April, May. And we were talking about some really important things. And I felt it was really important for us all to be in person, and we had to close the library, honestly. And I don't want to have to do that anytime we want to have a meeting where we're in person. And it was a really beneficial meeting. So this is both trying to kind of increase hours where we can, both because we recognize that service levels are going to change downtown with the shift to the pop-up location. And to test some things out and see how the community responds.
A question about the layout.
Perfect.
It seems like the children's area is right next to the main entrance area. And one of the nice things about, and I know this is temporary, so what we get by with anything for 6 months, but right now, the children's library is kind of up in back and kind of isolated. This is kind of, everybody that's coming in or out is gonna go by. Is that a wall there that?
It is, right, that little thing right here is kind of like a railing.
Okay.
It's there's a railing that kind of goes up this very kind of
Yeah,
shallow
like
ramp.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's a balance. So this, where these little chairs are, is a really kind of nice out, like bay window. And if you kind of get farther in the back, it gets darker. It doesn't kind of have the nice open feel. So, you know, I think that's a good point. I think when we were looking at it with the space planners and with the staff, it just felt like a nice area with the rail there. You know, it's, yeah, it doesn't have the complete enclosure, but it does kind of have like a little alcove feel. And there's really nowhere in this space that we're gonna be able to get it totally enclosed like the current spaces. So you know, it's a balance. And I think another thing about this is that it's all pretty mobile furniture. So if we do kind of test this out and find, wow, this is really not working, like I think we could adjust the furniture and where the collections are accordingly. It's a small enough space that we could probably do that.
So these are all rental furnitures or it sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, so a lot of it we're gonna be able to repurpose from our existing furniture, so a lot, like all of the staff desks, a lot of the tables, the chairs, the powered computers. Even a lot of them, I have another version where they've kind of highlighted which are units we've already have, so like all of these stacks on the left are ones that are shelving units that we have in our current library that we're gonna be able to move over. Additionally, in the new library, we are getting additional mobile shelving. So we're working with our space planners and Nolan Tam to figure out what could we purchase early, use in this space, and then move over. So there are things we're gonna have to buy. I think a lot of these wall units, we're looking at repurposing some of the wall units we have, but to be honest, I don't think it's really gonna work because our wall units, we are removing some of them in the construction project, but we will have to do asbestos remediation at the same time, and so that just won't work out. But we are gonna look at those options, and the space planner we're working with has a few other library clients that they're doing these sorts of projects. So they've already said like some of our partition walls, they might be able to get from other projects they're working on. So we did include funding in our budget for next year for fitting out the temporary space.
I have two questions. One might be super silly. I just noticed there's a spot here for showers. That's not for public use, I assume.
No, that's just.
Or anybody's use, I don't know.
It's a very odd building.
Yeah.
I think it used to be a massage parlor. So not shown on here is like 5 random rooms with sinks in them.
Yeah.
Like it has some.
Well, I mean, it could be
Yeah.
like a salon, right? Because it's a beauty expo, like you did hair or something.
The sinks don't appear to be sinks that you would use
Oh.
they're just like regular sinks.
Oh,
Like, I think it was a massage parlor.
Okay.
I think, but yeah, there's showers. I don't think I don't think staff would even use them. It just happens to be a room that has showers, and I would have probably removed that because we won't be using it.
And then, well, and I can appreciate on the schedule, like the changes and everything, it probably took a lot of work and a lot of, mixing and matching and a lot of planning. The one thing I'd just like to flag for just kind of maybe seeing how it goes, I don't know when you're gonna check, but seeing whether it makes sense to do weekend, the Sundays at Pickleweed and Northgate, because I know you said you're adding a day at Northgate and adding a day at Pickleweed. I just, as a suggestion, whenever you review how it's all going, to maybe think if we could shift it, because if we're shifting to this small space on the weekends downtown, I think, we might see like more families needing space to do things on the weekend.
Yeah, weekends is tough from a staffing perspective. We already have to supplement with temp staff.
Oh,
And even with the minimal level of staff that's required, we will still use some temp staffing on the weekends. So yes, Sundays is tough. Honestly, most libraries, many libraries, even in Marin, aren't open on Sundays. Yeah, I would say it's about, I looked at this recently, I think it's about 50-50, including some of the main, like, I don't wanna say off the top of my head, but I know like of Sausalito, San Anselmo. Like Fairfax, some of those larger ones are not open on Sundays, so it's a tough time for staffing. For staff much prefer working Tuesday through Saturday versus Sunday through Thursday.
okay. Good to know.
Yeah, so
But there won't be layoffs or reductions in the staffing though.
No, I mean, you know, we are at the moment relying really quite heavily on temp staff. And partly that's because we've had vacancies where we know going in to this period, we're not gonna need as many staff, so we haven't been working at filling those vacancies. So I think, you know, we will not be using as many temporary sub staff,
Mhm.
but we won't be reducing our permanent headcount.
And are you, I'm sorry, are you only renting then the ground floor? There seems to be a second floor and some stairs.
Yeah, this was
and-
one of the pieces of like why this place worked out really well, cause it's a huge building and the property owner agreed to only charge us for what we're using. But there's not gonna be another tenant. So we are on the second floor, there are two office spaces that we will be using. But primarily, all of the public space will be on the ground floor. There is no elevator or ADA access to the upstairs.
Okay.
So we do have accessible desks for staff, should they need it downstairs, as well as the upstairs space.
So Kathy, I mean, one idea, because I know parking is such a big deal and people getting tickets and not having the change put in. Can there be like a validation for like that parking on A, that you just get the ticket and library could validate it for like 2 hours or something like that, just to encourage people to come with them?
I don't know, I could ask.
Yeah, just
Ask.
think, I don't know. That's my pet peeve. It's so hard to find parking or, you know, I mean, I love
Yeah.
that parking center, but just thinking.
Yeah, I mean, there is parking around, but it is paid,
Exactly.
right? I mean, there's the lot on, it was like the house and Third.
Uh-huh.
Where there's like the little walkway that's kind of just right next to
Mhm.
the next
Exactly.
building.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's on
Yeah.
A. So there's a number of parking garages that are city operated, so yeah. I don't know, I could ask our parking services. I'm not sure if they. I don't even know if they're machine, it would have to be the machines,
True.
and I'm not
That's
sure
true.
if they're set up to cause you prepay.
It's
So
not.
I don't
it's
know how that
one
would
you
work.
do get a ticket. I think the other one you do.
Yeah, I actually haven't used those lately, so I'm not sure how they
Yeah,
would work.
Yeah, you do, you just put in your credit card.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah. I don't know.
yeah, no, it's something to look into.
I have a few questions. Did just for comparison purposes, what is the square feet at this one like versus Northgate or what we have like?
So the total square footage that we're renting is like 50. Hold on, I can get this exactly for you. Let me just pull it up. Because it's, the total number I have includes all of the,
I mean,
well, all the staff space and, things like that, so. So this like main room is about 3,800 square feet. And for comparison, Northgate, I believe is 2,000 and Pickleweed is 3,000, but that includes like the restrooms and the computer room. So it will still be larger than any of our other locations. I mean, not by a lot.
right. And are these grants covering all these fees, like the monthly, or is it coming out of, no?
No,
So the
it will
grant
come,
only covering like the infrastructure capital?
yes.
Oh, so what's the budget that outside that's coming from the library?
So we have a pretty substantial Measure D fund balance.
Oh.
And so, you know, the Measure D fund balance will be used for the rent. Which is about, it's about 5,700 a month, which not bad, right? And then we have about $70,000 in So we will be having salary savings from the reduction in temp staff hours that we will be using for any kind of tenant improvements we need. You know, again, we're gonna be trying to reuse furniture as much as possible. Same with, you know, purchasing furniture that will eventually be in here. Yeah, and things that can be reused and that are really for the public operations and the public service element, we will be able to use Measure D fund balance. So it's not actually reducing, it's not like we had to find other savings in our budget for next year to pay for this.
Does Measure D roll over every year? Oh, okay.
That's
great.
Yeah, so that will also, I know at our last meeting, I kind of flagged, we're looking at the AMH and whether or not that makes sense. I have gotten some feedback from other agencies so far, that's all been quite positive, so. You know, we're still waiting to hear back from a couple other agencies, but, you know, at this point, I do think we probably will move forward with that. So that will also use Measure D fund balance, because that will kind of support operations and service levels.
Okay. And then there's, lastly, curious, I know you're saying you're increasing sort of different days and changing it. What is the shift of total hours versus what you're
What we're doing
used to
now.
do versus, yeah,
Oh, did I not put both on the staff report? So we're going from. So our current hours are 112. The hours that we were at before February, kind of like we did change when we're still kind of in that staffing transition, was at 123. So we're actually increasing even beyond what we were operating at before,
132 right now.
132.
do you know for each one, like downtown Pickle Market?
So from current hours, downtown is increasing by 2. It's just the 1 additional night hour, or the 2 additional night hours. Pickleweed is increasing by 7. We're adding a day. And then Northgate is increasing by 11 because we're adding a day as well as kind of extending from a 5-hour operational period to a 6-hour a day.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, great, thank you, Catherine, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Then moving on, you're up again, number 4.
Yeah.
Staff liaison report.
So the big news is we've hired an assistant director.
Oh, great.
He will be starting July 16th. His name is Daniel Avalos. If you know the Novato Library at all, we stole him from there. So he is the desk supervisor there. He's been with the county for, I think, 14 years. Prior to that, he worked for Oakland Public Library. He's got a ton of experience in library operations. He's done a lot of programming, diversity, equity, strategic planning. He's really had his hands in a lot of the pies for the county. And I'm really excited to have him on. I think he's gonna do, I mean, there's so many elements of the job that he just will already know so well and really be able to come in and support staff immediately. And I'm really excited to be working with him. I think he's gonna be, yeah,
That's great.
yeah.
Great.
Came very highly recommended. So yeah, that's huge stuff. When I told our supervisors, they all cheered, so. I was like, okay, good. So that's great. So he should be at because we're going dark in July, so he will be at our August library board meeting.
So we can't grill him until August.
Yes,
Okay.
you give him he'll have a few weeks to settle in.
That was Jill and Henry's old role.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So other than that, I mean, I think the library planning for the closure and the library operations has been the big thing. Additionally, as if this wasn't enough, we are moving forward with with the design for the pickleweed branch renovation. Our hope is to really time these so that, when we open downtown, shortly thereafter, we would close pickleweed. I mean, primarily because the building forward grants need to be spent by March 2026. So in order to hit that deadline with pickle, we need to get a move on. So really excited. We've had a few meetings with the architect, Jason Architecture. They're really great to work with. Really know their stuff and have brought some good ideas. So, I think there's a few elements to the project that we're trying to figure out because the current configuration just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, like where the police substation is, the number of restrooms. And in our mind, it's like, oh, let's just change that. But there's pieces that there's kind of like domino effect. So what we discovered was the number of restrooms in that location is outsized for the library, but it's needed to support the plumbing code fixture requirements for the full building. So anyways, we're there's some things that we're looking at that would be outside the grant scope. So we're just trying to figure out, like, are there funding sources for those? How much would they cost? How do they impact the project? But we are expecting to bring the designs to you all in September. At your September. We were hoping for August, but I think it's just gonna be too tight with how early in the month this meeting is. So we'll probably be looking at bringing those to you in September, but it's exciting. We saw some renderings today, and it really, you can make a very nice space down there, and really make it a lot more kind of coherent. Other than that, Marinette, our board meeting, we are going dark in July as well. We had a board meeting in June. One thing of note is that the Dominican Library Board or Library Director is no longer there. I think the Dominican's going through some challenging financial changes and has gone through a round of layoffs. So there's a shift there. And we'll kind of just have to see what happens over time. But we are also moving forward with hiring the system administrator from Marinette, which is kind of like the top position there. We also had our NorthNet quarterly meeting last week, which we really focused on kind of the budget adoption. We also heard some presentations from other agencies that have gotten building forward grants. I think the big one in our area is Larkspur. They are using a $5 million building forward grant for their library. So kind of watching how that goes. I think they're also watching us and how our closure and renovation is going. So I think we're kind of learning a lot from each other. And I think those are the big reports.
One thing I just want to bring up, since I think, obviously, like you said, you're trying to plan the pickleweed closure to like follow pretty close after downtown. I think just kind of like the one thing to be cognizant of with the public is just like the whiplash, because we're going to close one library and then close down another, which also then serves a primarily bilingual ESL community. So, if we need to do more outreach for that closure, it might be worth thinking ahead of time.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, I think I didn't even mention, I think I don't want to start publicizing this too far out and then people think like, oh wait, when is this happening? So we're thinking probably about a month ahead of time to start really messaging the closure. Through our email. I mean, we do have our newsletter goes to every card holder through, I know signage can be challenging, but people do really look at our closure signs. So and then through the cities, all the city channels. So we're going to be doing that. But yeah, I agree. I think, one other thing, we're not there yet, but kind of looking at like, is there something in the community center we could still offer some sort of library service, if
Mm.
it's like holds pickup in the lobby or, you know, I mean, that community center is heavily utilized as a community center, so I don't think we'd really be able to like have a designated room there per se, but if there's, I don't know, that's something we're not there yet, but as we get closer, just thinking about that.
Maybe work with, cause I know Canal Alliance is building, having their new facility come, I don't know if it'll come online,
I don't know the timeline on that.
but,
But
maybe
it's also one, like, there's a good chance it'll be closed over the summer, so we could do outdoor programming there. You know, still have story times or something like that, so I think there's options for continuing some level of service there.
Any other comments?
I have a random thought, I'm thinking about like when it was COVID, right? And where we are in the new location, there's not parking and, you know, people wanna just get their stuff, as you were saying, like. Is there a way at one of those spots to do like a? Cause I mean, when you look at the holes or the borrows, they're not that significant, I mean, it's what, maybe like a whole wall or something like that. Is there a way? At some location or somewhere to do it where people, you know how you used to come out and like,
Curbside pickup.
yeah, like I mean, not obviously here, like somewhere else where you could do. A curbside,
Like at a totally different location, not downtown.
or like if you had like storage shed or something, you know what I mean? Like, could you do like a storage shed outside and then people could just roll and.
Or like I was even thinking like what they have the temporary for the schools, you know, those temporary classrooms.
Yeah, so I mean, something where it's like, or you just even in the parking lot here, you know, like.
Yeah, I mean, we did at one point kind of look at getting lockers, like holds lockers, but it is tricky finding a good space, honestly. Like you know, it's just with like the data requirements, electrical. Like this has to be a certain area of flat ground. I think.
Anyway, I'm not, obviously don't
Yeah.
have an answer, I was just thinking, I just like, when you were talking about that, it made me think about. How nice and simple that was with COVID and with all these challenges of different spaces. No
think
drop off
that-
in the parking, maybe there's a way to explore that.
Yeah, I mean, I think one challenge with that is like the location code and like, do people know if we're having like all these different locations, do people know where they're going to pick up? And then there's also, we'd have to figure out how to do that in the Marinette system and.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, maybe just in the parking lot, you know, here.
Right, but that's still like, are they going to the downtown pop-up or here and where do we store it here and.
Construction that's gonna be happening.
I don't have any of the answers.
Yeah.
You know, getting up there is-
I mean, and I think that's what we were kind of trying to get at with having at least one spot that's like, you know, 15-minute.
But that's one spot, like, I could just imagine all the people who are going to be like. I'm not gonna say publicly, like, forget this, like, I'm not gonna circle around to try and get my book, you know, of some sort, so I was just. Thinking about something else, but,
Yeah, I think we'll
Anyway,
have to
just-
see, we'll have
it-
to see how, if that. Yeah, if that ends up being an issue.
Well, it's hard because it's only gonna be temporary. And so you get people used to one thing or another and it. So I don't know that there's a good answer, but I think her point is well taken.
Yeah.
If there was a way to, you know, expedite.
I mean,
the-
there is always Northgate, which has excellent
Mhm.
parking.
yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
If people really are feeling, I don't know, we'll see, we'll have to see what kind of feedback we get and.
Cause they also made it fun, do you know what I mean? Like, they also were like, had that wall, like, oh, these are fun books to check out, and like, did you wanna do it? You can immediately do it there, like, I don't know if you remember, but it was more, it made,
Yeah, we're just not gonna have that kind of
Yeah.
space or staffing,
Yeah.
'cause-
anyway,
yeah.
if there's, while you're in the middle of all of it, maybe there's, you know, a way to think about it.
Yeah,
But we will be totally closed though, right?
not while
No,
when
but
it
it will be
closes.
totally closed.
Yeah, well, that's where I was kind of talking about, maybe there could be some form of service there, but I'm not sure what that would look like yet.
The wall to pick up there.
Yeah,
Yeah, that I could see having more because it is, we do have the community center there, that could maybe, that will be remain open, that could maybe support something like that.
The only other question I had is, can you give us an update from the Friends, like, and the status of what
The Friends or the Foundation.
foundation, sorry, what
The
they're.
Friends are having their book
Yeah.
sale in July. Which come down, it was supposed to be in June, but they had challenged their storage unit is on the second floor and the elevator broke. So they couldn't get their books out of storage for their June sale, but they pushed it to July, so I guess July. Oh, it's July 21st. Monday, July 21st, so put on your calendars, come down, buy some books. The foundation, they qualified for the ballot, city council voted to put it on. The November ballot, so they're continuing forward. We just received a significant donation from them to the city. Which will be restricted for use for a new library.
Great.
And that will, I think council will have to accept that formally. We're shooting to have it on the July 15th meeting.
I'm sorry, I thought another question regarding the new temporary library on 4th. Is there any space outside on like a sidewalk? Like you have a parquet for, the restaurants. Is there any space, and I'm thinking, for example, Copperfields, which might have
Their sales staff.
a little thing outside, is there any room at all? or is
There's
it-
a little alcove, kind of like the way the windows go, they kind of curve in, and we're thinking about, we put a whole a book drop there for people to drop off
Okay,
after hours. We were thinking about kind of that in that like rampway entryway, having like some sort of display there. It is gonna be winter, so that's kind of another
Yeah.
consideration with weather, putting things outside. One fun thing that is kind of coincidental, the downtown Santa Fe Arts District is working on putting kind of activating some of the vacant storefronts with art displays.
Cool.
And Youth and Arts is developing one for the library for this 1009 4th Street that should be going in before the library. It's kind of a separate project from us, but they have designed it to work with the library. So that will be up while we're there, and it's Bahia Vista School students designed a really beautiful, actually has some books in it, and it's very pretty, colorful. It will be kind of along the windows. So create a nice entryway.
Okay, well, I'll move just to item number 5, and a brief, other comments on meetings, conferences, or seminars attended by board members. Nobody went to any of the meetings. Great, so with that, adjourn the meeting, and we're dark next month, so next meeting in August.
Legendary.
The agenda.
Thank you. Thank you.